what I see in the work of Mr. Gulen's followers in Hizmet movement is that philosophy of sharing, of helping each other, of helping those who have less than we do in a very practical way, as an example of a side of Islam that gets forgotten or neglected. Opportunities where people actually and talk to each to visit the organization that it's a model that has only supporters of. My name is Alok Mukherjee. I'm currently the chair of the Toronto Police Services Board. I've been chair for about 10 years now. The board is responsible for the oversight and governance of policing in the city of Toronto. My background is in human rights. In the 90s, I was head of the Ontario Human Rights Commission, and I've been a community activist for many, many years, very interested in the issues of equality and inclusion and non-discrimination as a society. So that's briefly my background, human rights and making sure that we provide policing in a way that is helpful to and supportive of public safety. I came across the Hizmet movement through the IDI and the programs of IDI in Toronto, and I got very interested in the messages and the um, discussions that were taking place in the programs of IDI that raised my curiosity. And I've done some reading about Hizmet movement. Then 2 years ago, I had the fortune, my wife and I, of going to Turkey on one of the study tours organized by IDI and got to meet people who are active in the Hizmet movement, learn about Hizmet movement. So it's a combination of intellectual exchanges, reading, as well as personally visiting and interacting with people who are supporting and working for the Hizmet movement. I've been very, very interested in the way the movement is making a big contribution in so many ways. The word Hizmet itself is very interesting to me because we have in India a word which is a variation of Hizmet. The word is Khidmet, and Khidmet means service. So from that, I assume that Hizmet means serving the people. And to the extent that the philosophy of Hizmet movement is serving people for the betterment of society, I was very interested. And to find that there are so many different ways in which people involved with the movement are providing that service as volunteers on their own time, contributing their own resources, their homes, their money, their time in health and in education and in poverty reduction, in disaster relief. I was very, very amazed that people who have come together, ordinary people, because they believe in the philosophy of Hizmet movement and are prepared to give their lives to the betterment of their fellow human beings through service is a very important principle that I think we need to promote globally. Because at a time when there's so much inequality, so much lack of trust among each other, there's so much suspicion, there's so much violence. Um, and governments um, have scarce resources to provide the kind of programs and services that people need in order to live better lives. This philosophy of the Hizmet movement, of contributing to society voluntarily, people helping each other, is what I think for me is the most important aspect of Hizmet movement. I've done some reading uh, of the words of Mr. Gülen, and I think he brings a breath of fresh air. There's so much doctrinaire debate and so much antagonistic debate. And his idea of building amity, building um, understanding through dialogue, his idea of bringing the positive side of Islam through that kind of interfaith, intercultural exchange is so very, very critical. And so he is presenting to the world through his philosophy, through his direction, through his encouragement, um, a whole different understanding of Islam that unfortunately has been missing in the world. So, to the extent that Mr. Gulen is telling people you don't have to be in conflict all the time, that you can understand each other and through learning about each other, work together and bring solidarity and bring harmony in the world, uh, is for me a very important philosophical, practical guidance that he is giving us. It's not a secret that Islam is going through a very critical phase right now, but it's not an isolated moment. As a student of culture and history, uh, I'm aware that there has been a negative view of Islam that goes back to centuries. Coming from India, it's manifesting itself right now, but it has been there as a kind of a suspicion of Islam, kind of a criticism of Islam, and the role that Islam has played in supposedly um, preventing the continuation and evolution of ancient Indian culture. There's a whole history of anti Islamic thinking and practice. It has become intensified in the past 20-25 years. And we are seeing some manifestations of response to Islam which are extremely troubling. But at the same time, I think there are also elements within the Islamic world whose actions and whose reactions and responses to this world situation right now is also not helping. And in that context of negativity, of suspicion, of a tendency to hold Islam responsible for some of the problems of the world, uh, of a tendency to generalize as if Islam as a whole is quote unquote bad. In that context, uh, the view or the aspect of Islam that is being promoted through Mr. Gülen's work, through the Hizmet movement, is so very essential. To say, don't paint all of Islam in one particular way. Don't believe that only the negative things you hear are the essence of Islam. That Islam is a humanistic religion, that Islam has a philosophy of service to humanity. I mean, when we observe holy days or months like Ramadan and Eid and so on, one of the things we do is to remember those who don't have anything. We talk about sharing. And what I see in the work of Mr. Gulen's followers in Hizmet movement is that philosophy of sharing, of helping each other, of helping those who have less than we do in a very practical way, as an example of a side of Islam that gets forgotten or neglected. So I think the contribution to Islam that's being made is so very significant in the context of hostility and negativism that prevails in the world today and that has prevailed for a long, long time. And it is very unfortunate because it's a very one-sided negative view of Islam. And it's doing tremendous damage to such a large part of the world's population in terms of reaction to Islam. So I think the contribution to Islam and the understanding of Islam that is being promoted through the various activities and efforts of the Hizmet movement and Mr. Gülen's writing is absolutely essential.
And what the Hizmet movement has done is that they have taken the universal aspect of Islam and reinstilled it once again in the general conversation of people. That the Muslims are actually standing for some of the most important universal values that are shared by everyone.
Given that poverty knows no barriers, uh, given that poverty can be so destructive in so many ways, um, I think it is an obligation. And to the extent that the movement recognizes that fighting poverty is um, essential to building good communities, good societies.